Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Mustard Saves, and welcome to the first episode in a new series where I'm going to be attempting to make rice and bean dishes from all around the world. As I'm sure we're all painfully aware, grocery prices have been steadily on the rise, and $20 is basically the new $5 bill, and we're all having to adapt to new ways of working our budget to try and fit this new normal. And if you're searching up any type of advice on how to save money in the kitchen, dried beans are easily in the top 3 spots on any list you look at. But one thing that has been on my mind about that kind of advice is that those lists rarely include a variety of ways to use whichever beans they're recommending. My partner and I grew up in Hispanic households, so rice and beans made up a large portion of our childhoods. And while I could eat Mexican-style rice and beans every single day and never get tired of them, a lot of people struggle with the idea that in order to save money, they will sometimes have to sacrifice variety. But thanks to the wonders of social media, I have started to become exposed to a variety of different cultures, and I've been truly amazed to see how many ways that people around the world handle the same set of ingredients and come up with completely different dishes. So here I am, embarking on a journey around the world from the comfort of my own kitchen, and I just thought it would be fun to bring you guys along for the journey. And as always, please remember that I'm just your humble household cook, and everything that I end up putting together is usually the first time I'm trying to make it, and due to a lack of skill or access to regional ingredients, I'm most certainly going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And of course, to help you give a more clear idea of what some of these recipes were actually supposed to look like, I will be leaving links in the description to any of the recipes that I took inspiration from. So without further ado, to kick this off, episode 1 is going to cover 4 different recipes using lentils and chickpeas. And already for my first preface, there are so many different kinds of lentils. This is just the bag that I picked up because it's what my grocery store had. And I still wanted to show the point that you can use one kind of bean for multiple things, so if you prefer a different kind of lentil, or if you have a different lentil available to you, then go ahead and swap that out. And same for the chickpeas. I found out through this video that there are different kinds of chickpeas too. The first recipe that caught my eye was this super simple but very delicious looking meal from the Middle East called Mujada. It only consists of 4 ingredients: lentils, rice, onions, and cumin. As an onion girl myself, this was right up my alley. I started by washing 1 cup of lentils and putting them on the stove with a total of about 4 cups of water. And while those got their head start, I chopped up this entire softball-sized onion and got them started on the stove with a little bit of salt. Mujada is all about the onions, and looking back, I definitely should have doubled this amount because it really cooks down to nothing. And I also should have maybe sliced them thinner for a better aesthetic, but that's about the only difference that decision would have made. After my lentils had been going for about 15 minutes, I swapped the pans around so that I could add in 1 cup of washed long grain rice along with about a teaspoon or so of cumin and some salt to taste. If you cook your onions ahead of time, this would also be the time that you'd combine them all together, but from the recipes that I flipped through, it seems that whether you add them in now or on top later is dependent on your personal preference. And if you're feeling like putting some extra effort into it, you can also pan fry thinly sliced onions on the side at a higher temperature so that they crisp rather than caramelize, and they make for the perfect crunchy onion topping. This dish is often served with yogurt and your choice of any of many types of Mediterranean salads or pickles. I didn't have any yogurt, but I did serve it with some pickles and a simple salad of tomato, cucumber, and parsley. And this meal was so delicious. If you like caramelized onions and you're looking for something cozy, warm, and filling, this is definitely something I'd recommend giving a try. Speaking of salads, I've made this next meal on my channel before, but if you're looking for something cold, refreshing, and even easier to throw together, then this Mediterranean chickpea salad is the way to go. I made my salad with tomato, cucumber, bell pepper, and olives. However much of each you add is totally up to you. And same for the dressing. I used olive oil, mustard, lemon zest, 1 clove of finely minced garlic, the juice from that same lemon, some more parsley, and feta is the most common cheese I've seen used to make this salad, but to save myself about $1, I went with plain goat cheese, which I found out that feta is made using sheep's milk, but is sometimes made with a combination of sheep and goat milk, so this was not actually that dramatic of a swap. And as another quick comment, when I say 1 clove of garlic, now is not the time to convert the recipe like you would with a recipe that cooks garlic into it. Raw garlic is very spicy, and it takes a second for it to infuse your dressing, so it can be really tempting to add more than 1 at a time. But it is like really easy to overpower your dressing with raw garlic if you add too much of it. I served this salad on top of some plain white rice and topped it off with some sunflower seeds and then some red onion on my bowl only, as my boyfriend does not do raw onion in any capacity. Again, this is another super easy meal to throw together, and I have already made it several times off camera, so I'm so glad that it is now in my recipe repertoire, and I really recommend that you guys try it out. For this next recipe, this is the first one of the series that I will already readily admit that I have no idea if it's anywhere remotely authentic, but I found this on a HelloFresh website. They had a recipe for jerk seasoned lentils with a pineapple and cucumber salsa. I skipped the salsa, but I did have jerk seasoned burgers at a restaurant in Louisiana a few years ago, and they were absolutely delicious, so I was certainly intrigued by the idea. All the instructions are based off if you'd actually ordered the meal kit, so I was actually just eyeballing everything as I put it together. It starts off by getting some bell pepper and carrots going on a pan. Meanwhile, I washed up 1 cup of white rice and then added in 1 cup of coconut milk and 1 cup of water. And this was already mistake number 1. I needed the other half of the can for the recipe coming after this one, and I was hoping 1 cup would be enough, but just use the whole can of coconut milk with a splash of water so that way you get an actually creamier and stronger coconut flavor. Back to my pan, I plopped in some garlic, tomato paste, and this jerk seasoning I picked up at my H-E-B. And here's where things just immediately didn't work out. I wasn't sure how much of the seasoning to use, and I just kept adding it little by little to my pot, and before I realized what was happening, it was too late. Jerk seasoning typically includes sugar, but this mix was way too sweet. At first I thought it was just coming from the tomato paste, but when I looked up how to make homemade jerk seasoning, I knew what had happened. Luckily, I did have a lot of those spices already on hand, so I did end up adding them on their own, but overall, I just generally wasn't a fan of this particular meal. Again, that was 100% a fault of the type of pre-mixed seasoning that I purchased, and I'm sure it could have been way better with some other brand. My final rating for this dish would be like a 4.5 out of 10, but maybe I'll try it again in the future when I can find a more authentic jerk seasoning. And finally, to finish off my week of beans, I put together a really simple chickpea and coconut curry. I got started with about half a medium-sized onion until it started turning translucent. Then I tossed in some minced garlic until I could smell it. Then it was just a simple matter of tossing in a heaping tablespoon of curry powder, some crushed tomatoes, and cooked chickpeas to simmer. This dish was again another one that I had to go out and buy a new spice powder that I'd never tried before. And somebody please tell me why. I've known about curry powder as a concept and as something that existed, but I never knew it was a spice mix. It even says spice blend on the bottle. And before I get roasted in the comments, just hear me out. I hadn't considered it because curry is a plant that just exists all on its own. And it's very commonly used in cooking, and I had just always assumed that curry powder was just dried and ground curry leaves like any other dried herb in a jar. And the only reason I figured it out was because sometimes curry powder has this word here. But when I asked the internet what the difference was, it apparently just means it's spicier, and I just ended up feeling very foolish for having gone so long without knowing this. But curry powder lesson aside, this was, again, super easy to put together. I know I've said that a lot in this video, but as you could see, it really was. And for the final dish, it was again super yummy, very filling. No idea if it's authentic, but overall, I'm really happy to have a new spice added to my cabinet. And that was it for episode number 1, you guys. As you could see, that was super painless. 2 of the recipes were made with things that I already had in the house. 2, the only things I needed to buy outside of my comfort zone were 2 seasoning packets and a can of coconut milk. And that's everything that I made to start off episode 1, you guys. If any of you guys out there are actually knowledgeable in the authentic versions of anything that I made, please leave some comments down below. Like I said, I'm just a humble house cook, and I really tried my best to do some research before I started this. And I tried picking the absolute easiest recipes to start just to show that just because something is a foreign concept to you doesn't mean that it has to be difficult. I would also love to hear any suggestions from you guys in the comment section for any other rice and bean dishes that you would recommend that I try out. And yeah, as always, if you liked the video, please leave a like. If you're interested in seeing what else I get up to in the kitchen, please subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye!